Hello there, do hope you're all well. Well, I would say we're in for a bit of a treat with this video, but not really. It's just a bit of a sad one, really. Because it's a bit of an excerpt from James O'Brien's show today where he has a discussion about Boris Johnson's press conference where he tells the nation that we've reached over 100,000 COVID deaths. And he basically talks about how actually, do you think, in a little bit where, how Boris is sorry or not. And he basically said that Boris will get away with it, because the nation will just forgive him and let him get away with it. And he explains his reasons why and all that, with the right-wing press and all that. And he even asks if anybody wants to defend him, you're more than welcome to ring up. And I thought, well, nobody's going to ring up. And to be honest, a lot of them, nobody did really up until this time. It was usually people telling the sad tales about how their families have passed away and even having to go to funerals via Zoom. But cometh the hour, cometh the man, cometh James the sycophant. To say he contorts himself into all sorts of shapes to defend the government is quite sad, really. But here comes James.
6 minutes after 11 is the time. Well, we still a lot of love coming in for FaceTime and the quality of the calls. How do you know we're really using FaceTime? We haven't just broken all the COVID regulations going. We've got a queue of people in the actual studio moving up to the microphone. But I agree, the clarity is unprecedented. James is in Hampstead. James, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. How you doing?
Good, thanks.
I have to say I disagree with you. Or disagree with this idea of blaming the government. I don't think.
Who do you think's been in charge?
Pardon?
Who do you think's been in charge?
Well, my stance is that I don't think that they should take full responsibility at all, because at the end of the day, the virus doesn't spread because of what the government decides. It spreads by person-to-person contact, and I'm absolutely 100% with Oliver on his angle, what he was saying. You say that Boris Johnson told us what to do at Christmas, but he didn't. He didn't tell us to do anything. He didn't. You know, we have to take personal responsibility.
Battles the experts to save Christmas. How do you think that reaches most people, James?
Well, you have to take personal responsibility for your own actions, and you have to have accountability for your part to play.
So what is Boris Johnson's job then? What is his job, do you think?
Well, he has to juggle a lot of things. Look, I'm not a pro-government person necessarily.
No, I just want you to tell me what you think his role is, as opposed, because you're offering it up. You're offering up personal responsibility as an alternative to political responsibility. I mean, the reality is going to have an element of both in it, but for most people it's going to be a huge proportion of political responsibility. I just genuinely want you to tell me what you think his job should have been over the course of the last year.
Well, leadership, and I was disappointed throughout the year with the government leadership.
But doesn't one lead inevitably to the other? In the absence of leadership, personal responsibility becomes meaningless because you don't know what you're supposed to be doing. And then when you read a newspaper telling you that he's battling the experts to save Christmas, what are you supposed to think?
You think for yourself. Think for yourself and look at what you.
So where are you getting your information from?
Well, I'm reading what the scientists have to say.
Which scientists?
The scientists in the conferences and the scientists that I read.
What conferences?
The press conferences.
So you're listening to the chief scientific advisor and the chief medical officer. So if Boris Johnson then does the opposite of what they advise him to do with regards to circuit breakers or even with regards to the tier system, who do you think is responsible for Boris Johnson deciding to ignore the scientists?
I can't.
Is it about personal responsibility?
You have to take personal responsibility for with what you can find out. I can't
But I just ask you, if Boris Johnson chooses to ignore the scientists that you've decided through personal responsibility to follow, whose fault is that?
Well, I'm not privy to all the other things that the government are trying to juggle, because I know that economics was part of it as well.
Yeah, we're moving around a bit. I'm just asking you, who do you think is responsible for Boris Johnson deciding to ignore the scientists that you just said personal responsibility should have led us all to follow?
Well, who says that he was ignoring the scientists?
They did.
When?
When they said the tier system is not going to work and we wanted a circuit breaker in September, a 2-week circuit breaker in September.
I'm not here to defend.
What are you here for then, mate?
You said I'm just trying to offer the idea that I've been very disappointed today with the lack of insight that the public's role in this.
And whose job is it to keep the public informed?
I think partly the government and partly the public.
How can the public inform the public?
How can the public inform the public? Well, I'm not an expert, but I haven't, just because the government have told me that I can do Christmas, for example, that doesn't mean I did Christmas.
No.
In the same way that
but they told you that you could. If they told you that you couldn't, would you have been more or less likely to do the dangerous thing? If the government said don't do the dangerous thing, or the government said do the dangerous thing, do you think you'd be more or less likely to do it?
I agree, but there's far too much focus on what the government are saying
and
telling us to do than people taking personal responsibility.
You keep saying personal responsibility, but it's already fallen apart, hasn't it? Really?
Okay. Well, let me talk. You just mentioned eat out to help out, right?
Yes.
So you said I went out to eat. I ate out to help out because the government said it was okay. That doesn't mean...
No. The main reason was because all my family had it.
What's that got to do with anything?
Well, we'd had antibody tests.
But you can still pass it on, though.
I don't know. I mean, maybe we could have done it at the time, but we stayed 2 meters away from everybody else.
Good.
And we washed our hands and we did all the things that the government told us to do. But I think you're probably right. They shouldn't have let us do that either. So they got that wrong as well. What's your point?
Well, the reason, I guess, that they did that as that specific example is the economic reason. They're trying to help out businesses from...
But what about personal responsibility?
Absolutely. It's not one thing or the other, James.
Well, what is it then, James?
It's both.
Right.
It's both.
Okay.
It's
and
both.
Boris Johnson's job is?
Boris Johnson's job is to lead the country as Prime Minister.
And so the 100,000 deaths are?
Oh, what? What are you asking me to tell you why there are 100,000 deaths?
Well, in the context of the man who's been leading the country for the last year, yes.
Everybody is responsible, including the government. But I haven't seen much direction.
Why are we the worst in the world?
Comparing country to country is not necessarily very helpful because every country has their own different population makeup.
Well, pick any country you want. We're worse. Why?
I just don't find it helpful, James. I just don't.
Well, I can only apologise for you not finding it helpful, and you know the 100,000 families that have lost someone will no doubt be enormously comforted by the thought that it was personal responsibility that caused their relatives to die, as opposed to the absence of clarity and leadership. Just actually for them, for people listening who've lost someone, just run through the personal responsibility bit again. What
do you mean in terms of people who've lost someone? You think?
Well, just tell them why it's the personal responsibility is the reason why so many people have died. Just explain that to them, because I can't.
I'm not. That's not what I'm saying.
Oh, it is.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, tell them what it is then that you've been saying, because I've got the wrong end of the stick.
I'm talking about. I read the BBC article today about.
No. You're addressing 100,000 grieving families directly on the issue of personal responsibility. I've misunderstood you, so tell them what you mean.
Not their personal responsibility. I'm talking about the people who aren't following the rules.
Right, but the 100,000 people who have died are the only topic of conversation on this programme today.
I know, and
so why are you here?
Because I'm disappointed. So
tell them about personal responsibility. Tell the grieving family.
I'm trying to tell you.
Good. Go on then.
Interrupting me. I'm disappointed in the press coverage, the news media. That there's not much mention of public responsibility. It's all about what the government have done, what the government haven't done. That kind of thing, and I'm disappointed. Like Oliver,
well, I feel your pain. I feel your pain, James.
I really am.
Thoughts and prayers. Just before you go, the 100,000 grieving families. What is the message that you want to give them about personal responsibility?
I'm not talking about them.
Well, everyone else is. It's 11:15.
Now imagine Jeremy Corbyn had presided over 100,000 deaths while he was in charge. Do you think he would have been giving Jeremy any sympathy or support? But he wouldn't. He'd have been screaming communism and whatnot. And as I listened to his guff and drivel, I was stood there just open-mouthed and absolutely just couldn't believe what I was hearing. Winston Churchill once said, "When the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do, sir?" And quite clearly, when the facts were set in front of him, James just decided to double down and keep digging himself into a hole he's never going to get out of. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of people out there who can see straight through this Etonian lying charlatan for what he is, an absolute disgrace, and shouldn't be anywhere near number 10. But quite clearly, there are people like James out there who are just complete root vegetables, and unfortunately their vote is just as important as yours is. But that's the sad reality we're living in at the moment. Anyway, I'll leave the video here, and until the next time, take care.